Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. When it comes to fresh, safe, local food, Vermont farms and farm stands are the place to be. And all across our state, growers have worked to comply with the Federal Food Safety Modernization Act. This is especially true for farms that run pick-your-own operations or host public festivals. Across the Fence's Keith Silva tells us about one operation that set the standard for small farms in Vermont.
At Cedar Circle Farm in East Thetford, the produce looks downright immaculate. From the greens in the cooler to the blueberries on the shelf, the food here is the epitome of healthy, wholesome, and nutritious. Out in the fields, a few hundred yards from the farm stand, it's a slightly different story.
It comes from the soil. Farming is not a clean job.
Maya Fisherburn is the processing lead at Cedar Circle Farm. She's the first line of defense in making sure the food sold here is as safe as it is fresh.
The moment that it comes out of the field, we try to process and get it into coolers as fast as we can. We fill up these 3 sinks, and we have a rinse, a wash, and a rinse again. Everything gets triple washed here.
Fisherburn takes pride in the farm's sanitation guidelines, and she expects every member of the staff to do likewise.
Everyone that works here, you're not just a harvester, or you're not just a weeder. To keep the standards that we want, I want the harvesters to know, what it looks like when it's processed, how to process it, why it's so important that we, keep good standards and, don't get people sick and things like that, you know?
The FDA's Food Safety Modernization Act, FSMA for short, was signed into law in 2011. The law sets standards that focus on the prevention of foodborne illness rather than reacting to a problem after it occurs. The food safety guidelines Cedar Circle put in place before FSMA was enacted puts the business in good standing to be in compliance with the law.
Cedar Circle is a model in so many ways.
Lisa Chase works for University of Vermont Extension. She specializes in agricultural tourism. Even with Cedar Circle Farm's proactive approach to food safety, there are still details in the regulations that need to be worked out.
Well, one thing that's really challenging for a lot of farms in Vermont is that these federal regulations were created for large businesses, huge farms that have had problems with food safety in the past. So those regulations are often set up for an entirely different type of agricultural operation than what we often have in Vermont. So here we have smaller farms and not so many steps in the processing till it goes out the door. And especially with direct sales, the farmer and the consumer are often interacting directly. They know each other. So one of our jobs with Extension is to help farms comply with the regulations without having the regulations become such a burden.
In addition to the farm stand, Cedar Circle also operates a summer camp. There's a pick-your-own operation, and the farm hosts several yearly festivals. The farm's reliance on community interaction means the public has to be incorporated into the farm's requirements in regards to food safety.
Running a farm is complicated and challenging as is. And one of the ways that farms in Vermont have really succeeded is by building community and building these direct markets. So for a lot of farms like Cedar Circle, those community interactions and being open is a key part of their business model. It's having multiple business enterprises within an already complicated farm structure.
To keep everything running as efficient as possible, Cedar Circle uses signage to direct customers to what's off limits, where to go in a thunderstorm, and the farm's policy on pets. The signs are a subtle way to include the public into the farm's culture.
It's almost invisible. It becomes part of the system.
Hans Estrin is a produce safety specialist with UVM Extension.
Food safety and the practices, good practices around food safety, can be integrated to make a real efficient, profitable, and happy farm. And it can be a driver, in fact, because when you start to think through and put on these goggles of risk reduction and you look at your farm, what it drives you to is this separation, coming up with systems, standard operating procedures, and writing them all down and separating them.
Across the Fence first visited Cedar Circle Farm in 2011. At that time, the farm required visitors to wash their hands before going into U-pick areas. Customers were skeptical at first, but understood the policy was for the greater good.
I've never been asked to wash my hands before berry picking before.
Janet Cathy is a longtime Cedar Circle Farm customer. When she was asked to wash her hands before berry picking, she was happy to abide by the farm's policies.
Anybody could have something on their hands that isn't clean, so it makes sense to have your hands washed. And then I realized that I could be leaving something on the berries for somebody else to get, so I understand about being considerate.
We also learned in our 2011 visit that Cedar Circle has a food safety manual for employees. When Fishburne started working here a few years ago, she didn't understand why the farm would need a food safety guide. She quickly caught on.
As a berry picker, when I first started here, I'm like, SOP system? I'm like, what? Yeah, they're teaching me to wash my hands and like rules and regulations, what not to do. But then during my second year, I'm like, wow, they actually have this all written down. What to do if like glass gets broken in here. They have every like scenario and even how to watch every vegetable. That's typed out. I'm very lucky to have inherited that, and I hope to like tweak it and keep going with it.
For Estrin, policies and procedures, like those in use and on display at Cedar Circle Farm and other Vermont farms, make for good business.
I think the most important thing for retaining the character and beauty and openness of Vermont farms for visitors is that each farmer knows their customers, they know what the regulations are, they know how to look at their farm and reduce risks, and they know how to interact with their customers. We don't have a cookie cutter way to solve this problem. That will really turn people off and it will hurt the industry. We really need each farm to take common sense regulation and integrate it into their own farm.
From the field to the farm stand, a little common sense goes a long way in making sure the freshest food from Vermont farms is also the safest. In East Thetford, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
As always, we encourage you to buy local. You can buy directly from your farm or visit your local farmer's market. It's the time of year that the vegetable garden is growing and perhaps requiring a little extra attention. Master gardeners know all about growing a healthy garden. For our next segment, we return to Orange County to visit a lush green garden where master gardeners are volunteering with a charitable organization that provides affordable access to healthy foods. Rebecca Gollin tells us more from the Upper Valley.
I'm actually going to have you put them in black crates as well. The cabbage, just because it will last longer.
If many hands make light work, then there's good news here at Willinghand's Garden in East Thetford.
Historically, the Willinghand's Garden has produced about 6 to 8 tons of food a year. This past year was 16,000 pounds or 8 tons. And we actually doubled the garden this year.
Gabe Zorhide is the executive director of Willing Hands. It's a nonprofit based in the Upper Valley that works to reduce food waste and hunger and improve access to healthy food for low-income residents of the area. The organization runs this garden with the help of many willing volunteers.
Willing Hands Garden is a partnership between Willing Hands and Cedar Circle Farm. Cedar Circle has a 3-day-a-week staff person who helps us with the garden. Otherwise, the garden is really run by 100% volunteer effort. So we have garden leaders who come out and lead teams of volunteers 2 or 3 days a week to grow the crops, from putting them in the soil, cultivating, weeding, everything, and harvesting.
This isn't just a little garden.
It's not just a little garden, and it's a lot of work. I don't think I put 2 hours at a time in my own garden anymore. But you know, you get talking and you're picking or you're planting or you're weeding, and The time does go by and you're forming friendships, bonds. Here's the most beautiful large leaf.
Patty Sarah first heard about Willing Hands when she was going through the University of Vermont Extension's Master Gardener course.
At the end of the program, of the Master Gardener program, they always have speakers come from different groups that are wanting some volunteer work. And this, I don't know, seemed like a fit. I love to cook. The idea of growing organic food for people, that's right up my alley.
Over the years, a number of Master Gardeners have volunteered at the garden.
One of our volunteer leaders is going through the Master Gardener program, and her mentor is also one of our longtime volunteers who got involved through the Master Gardener program. She's actually going to be working on a hoop house, which is be our first sort of season extension project within the Willing Hands Garden, and that's going to be a Master Gardener's project. So we're really, we've had a long history of having involvement from the Master Gardeners program, and we're looking really at deepening that with specific projects that they can take the lead on.
Projects like the Hoop House are important for Willing Hands because the garden is the only food source they control. All of the food the organization distributes is either donated, gleaned from nearby farms, or grown right here.
After sort of a winter of getting the surplus from grocery stores, people love to see the fresh stuff.
Willing Hands operation manager Jim McCracken started volunteering to fulfill his Master Gardener hours as well, before moving into his current position. He's in charge of making sure that the food that comes in gets where it needs to go. That's to food shelves, senior centers, and other local nonprofits that fight hunger. Helping to get fresh produce to people in his own community is one of the most rewarding parts of the job.
Well, fresh produce is probably one of the most expensive parts of a grocery bill, and so by getting this fresh produce, they have a healthier diet having access to it is the whole idea. So our mission is providing that and providing it weekly. The food bank does drops and things like that, but that's once a month. The good thing about Willing Hands is that we're there, and they're going to know we're there every week of the year, so they can change their diet.
Growing, collecting, and delivering fresh food to their neighbors in need. These volunteers in East Thetford have a hand to lend. At the Willing Hands Garden, I'm Rebecca Gullen with Across the Fence.
For more information on the outstanding work being done by Willing Hands, you can check their website, willinghands.org. Once again, thanks for joining us Across the Fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.